All right. We're ready to go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of 4 out of 5. My name is Monil.
And my name's Isaac.
And today we're reviewing The Batman.
Yes, the Batman that stars, of course, Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell, and then Jeffrey Wright, and of course, directed by the great Matt Reeves.
Man, first of all, before we get even into the review, and we both, so Isaac and I both saw the movie yesterday. We saw it separately, we didn't see
hmm
it together. But you just have to say, like, that's a pretty star studded cast. Wouldn't you say so? Pretty versatile
It is,
actors,
yeah.
right?
Well,
So,
very, very versatile actors, done a lot of things, and yeah, it's a very good cast. And then the director's just amazing, also.
yeah. Are you a big fan of Matt Reeves?
I haven't seen all his movies, but I've seen a good amount, like Cloverfield, of course, and then the two
Classic.
last two of the Planet of the Apes. Like those are the main ones that I've seen of his.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Planet of the Apes I've seen, but I've never noticed him,
Mhm.
like the director, in terms of like
Right.
him having such a stylistic way of doing this. But
Okay.
I guess before we get into the movie and like talk about the review, let's just do a high level sort of look into it, and then we'll dive deep into the movie, the characters, and what we think about it.
Mhm.
Let's start with 3 word reviews. What would you say? Like, if you had to sum this movie up in 3 different words, what would they be?
And I would say it's exciting, uh, loud, and then thrilling.
Ah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Those are 3 good ones.
Yeah.
I'll go with dark, which is pretty
Mm.
synonymous with
Right.
Batman. But
Yeah.
this I would say, and we'll go into why it's a little bit more dark than
Right.
other Spider-Man or other Batmans about different superhero movies.
Yeah.
Dark. I would say gritty,
Mm.
and I would also say because you use the word thrilling, and I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit thrilling, but it also is more of a horrifying movie as well.
Mm.
I'd go with that.
That's
Right?
good. Yeah.
Those are my 3 words there. So let's just, I guess, now that we've kind of summarized the movie, we talked about who's in the movie, we know sort of the lead up to it. Let's talk about how this is not even a superhero movie. Let's just start there,
Right.
right? Even though it says Batman, even though it's, it has Batman elements, and some of the characters because they've just been in the comic books and other Batman movies. For me personally, it felt like barely a superhero movie. This was like a crime detective thriller movie that I went and
Mhm.
saw. Quite a long movie as well, around almost 3 hours,
Mhm.
2 hours and 54 minute runtime. So that's where I want to start off. Like, this barely seemed like a superhero movie. Am I wrong here, or what do you feel about that?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it felt more like, yeah, like a crime kind of thriller type, because it wasn't like, even though Batman's in it, so and it's
Right.
called the Batman. Batman's in it. He is the main character, but I mean, it is very much of, like, yeah, detective, kind of the side of Batman we don't see a lot of. But yeah, he's all in this one. He's more with a partner a lot of times, whether it be, Jeffrey Wright's character, Commissioner Gordon, or a lot of times with Zoe Kravitz's character, Catwoman.
Yep.
But he's always with a partner. That's a lot of the times a lot of thriller crime movies. It's
Yeah.
the main character with its partner.
Yep. Yeah, almost like a detective movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think True Detective, like shows like that, even
Right.
Sherlock, right, with
Yes.
Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Watson, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what it felt like really when I walked into it, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it wasn't a
Yeah.
typical superhero movie that we're used to seeing from Marvel or even DC.
Mm-hmm.
It was if this was a standalone movie on its own, I would be okay with it rather than it being like a Batman franchise. If it was
Mm-hmm.
just like a standalone movie about some crime, I still think it would be a great movie. Not that um, having it be Batman wasn't great, but it's just, the movie can stand alone on its own without a superhero and it would still be great, which is definitely like difficult to say in this age of superhero movies and superhero TV shows.
Right. Yeah. It's very hard now. Getting a little bit hard to just create just a basic superhero movie with a lot of explosions and just with like a origin story and all this stuff.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to differentiate yourself now that there's so many.
exactly. And in a way, it's a departure from Dark Knight. Don't you think? Like
I think so. Yeah.
it's not the same. Maybe I know, like, it being Batman, there's still similar names and things of that nature of characters like Thomas Wayne and Arkham, and the fact that they're in Gotham City, like all those things. Yeah, there's similarities there, but in and of itself, the entire movie, it's a departure from Dark Knight. I would say it's even more darker in terms of the
Hmm.
content, the message, the Batman in and of itself. Like it's a more darker series than the Dark Knight series was.
Yeah, I would say so too. Yeah, there are a little bit of elements from the Christopher Nolan version, but I think yeah, the big difference, like you're saying, it's more detective. It's more that I think I would say uh, with Christopher Nolan's, it's more like a spy since he's kind of like I would say
That's true.
he has more of the gadgets, which is part of Batman, of course. But I mean, he's doing all these gadgets and he's more in the daylight. We see a lot of scenes of him in the daylight. In this, it's mostly night, and then a couple of scenes in the day, but it's more like when the sun's going down or when the sun's coming up. That's the only time we see Batman, but it's mostly nighttime is when he
Yeah,
appears.
I think the one daylight scene I remember is when he is going, like Bruce Wayne. He's Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
at the time, going to the memorial for the mayor who
Hmm.
has been killed, and that's like the
Right.
only time I can remember there being light and him
Hmm.
being outside in the light.
Right.
Other than that, maybe the ending, right when they are leaving the
Yeah, that's true.
cemetery, right?
Yeah.
But like that's really it, and it's a pretty rainy, it's a pretty rainy movie as well. A lot of
Yeah.
rain. I feel like the
Yeah.
first 30 minutes are definitely like it's raining outside, and like I
Yeah.
was like, is this gonna be the whole movie? Like really?
Rain and cold.
Rain and cold. Also
Yeah.
unique is, I don't know if you notice some of these things, but the Gotham City in and of itself, it's a mixture of Chicago, New York,
Yes.
and I think another city that I can't seem to recall. But New York and Chicago, they're very much prominent in the movie.
Yes.
Of course, in and of itself, it's just all Gotham City, but
Right.
there's a ton of those little elements you can pick out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would say so. Yeah, especially in the beginning part when there's like robberies and everything. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I know that street. I've been there. And then
yeah,
same thing when it's like the huge kind of landscape shot of I forgot which bridge, but I was like, that's I know that
yeah.
bridge.
Exactly. Oh, just for people who don't know, Isaac and I both live in Illinois, and
Yeah.
we've been to Chicago multiple times. So that's why for us it's like, oh, I've
Mhm.
seen this or I've been
Yeah.
there. It makes a lot of sense. So I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting. I know Gotham City's always made up of multiple cities. I think in
Hmm.
Christopher Nolan's it was based on Pittsburgh, right? A
Yeah.
lot of it, and there was
Pittsburgh.
a,
I think the second one did have some element. No, the first one had some Chicago. I
you're right.
think. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And then Pittsburgh was like the main sort of
Yeah.
Gotham, because I remember the Bane scene being in
Hmm.
Heinz Field and things of
Yeah.
that nature, right? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Do you do you kind of feel this Batman the way Robert, like let's get into the actors.
Hmm.
How do you think Robert's performance was as Batman?
I think it's really good. It's different, different
Hmm.
from all the other ones. I think you have to make it a little bit different since now there's so many Batmans. Just like it's now
Yeah,
basically like Batman here is basically like the James Bond in a
yeah.
way. It's like
This is the
there's so many.
44th Bat. This was a
Yeah.
44th Batman movie, or
Wow.
44th or 45th. Like
Yeah.
that's wild, right? It's a
Yeah.
character just like James Bond,
Mhm.
right? It has a lot
Right.
of value to it. Yeah,
So yeah, I did like that. I did like how different it was. I also liked that it was he was also younger. I think maybe he might be the youngest one. I don't know how old Christian Bale was, but he seems
yeah.
like younger than Christian Bale because all the other ones that we've seen they've been kind of older. You know, from Michael Keaton to uh, also Val
Val
Kilmer and
Kilmer,
then George Clooney, of
George
course,
Clooney,
um, Christian
classics.
Bale, and
Yep.
then Ben Affleck, the most recent one.
Right, right. Although I think Ben Affleck might have been one of the older ones, and
Yeah,
along with I think Christian Bale. I know the Christian Bale Batman movie came out in 2006,
yeah,
right? And then they
yeah.
followed it up like after a couple of years, and then Dark Knight was about I think 6 7 years ago. But
Yeah.
the crazy thing about this Batman and Robert's performance is the fact that he, I mean, this kind of goes back to what we talked about. He's definitely like a more dark Batman. Like, there's no doubt about in my lifetime that all the Batman movies I've seen, that this is the darkest that I've seen a Batman be, and that's him in the costume and out of the costume as well. When he's not
Hmm.
in the bat suit, I still feel like him as Bruce Wayne is not at all the Bruce Waynes that I've seen before. You know,
Hmm.
there's no charm to it. Like, to be
Yeah.
honest, he you barely see, like, for the most of it, he's not Bruce Wayne,
Hmm.
right? There's no elements of
Right.
like that because Bruce Wayne in my mind is someone who wants to carry forward his family's legacy, which this Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
does. But I've seen other Bruce Waynes in other movies kind of show action to do that. or there'll be more elements about what this person has done after the family has gone away to kind of preserve that legacy. But we didn't really see that in the movie. We didn't really see
Yeah.
Batman, or we didn't see any history of Bruce Wayne. We saw a lot about Batman and what
Mhm.
Batman does and what he does and what he doesn't protect, but not too much about Bruce Wayne, which maybe it's a setup for a franchise, right? Of course, it is a Batman movie, so there's going to be sequels, and it might be like a trilogy movie. That's where we can see it heading,
Right.
and that's what they're saving it for. But typically, for an origin story movie, it didn't necessarily feel like an origin story for a superhero.
Right. Yeah, it's very different, and I think that's what you have to do is play a little bit around with it. But yeah, not a lot of Bruce Wayne. I think when we did see him, it. I think that's the only kind of critique I have is that it seemed like Robert Pattinson played the kind of the same similar role in every single one. It's like
Yes.
when he's Batman, he's serious. When he's Bruce Wayne, he's serious. He's just always the serious guy. And there's not a lot of personality to him, which I think that's the one thing that's interesting about Batman is that when he's Batman, he's kind of like what Paul Daniel said at a little bit towards the end, but he says that this is your true self. I think Batman is who he really is. But then
Hmm.
when he's Bruce Wayne, he's more of this kind of
A
more of this,
collected.
yeah, collected, and then also,
Yeah.
it's a front. He's kind of this playboy type, kind of,
Yep.
to make sure to hide from the fact that, well, is this guy
Yeah.
this this vigilante? But it seemed like you could be like, well, he has a lot of money, and this guy travels at night, and we don't see. So
Yeah.
could it be? So I think that
Well,
was the only downside.
you're absolutely right, because in this movie, if we lived in the same town as the Batman, and Batman was a real real person, and we
Hmm.
were in the town living with him, this is the easiest movie where I can be like, oh, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Like,
Yeah,
there's no doubt. This guy barely shows up, and
yeah,
like, you know, even when he does show up, he's aloof and he's just all over the place. Like, I think
right.
the scene that really sticks out to me about Bruce Wayne, and I keep going back to this scene a lot, is when he's at the mayor's funeral, right?
Hmm.
And he's waiting for the valet, and he doesn't even notice the people in the back calling for him, and it just seems like he's completely tone deaf
Hmm.
to it. And even as he's walking up the stairs, he sees Catwoman, or he sees the girl wearing the same boots as Catwoman. We later
Right.
find out that's not Catwoman, but like, he beelines for that as if he's still Batman. So like, that separation between Bruce Wayne and Batman is definitely not in this movie, and maybe that's a critique, or maybe that's the way they wanted to play it. But the fact that it is a Batman movie, and Bruce Wayne, and maybe you agree with this or you don't, but Bruce Wayne is as important as Batman, I feel like, in
Yeah.
terms of the story. Like, if we're telling a Batman story, Bruce Wayne, it's almost like co-starring in a way, like Bruce Wayne starring, co-starring with Batman. It can't be one, because
Hmm.
then you lose that touch, because he's not necessarily a superhero. He just is a vigilante with a lot of
Hmm.
cool gadgets, right? If it was a
Right.
superhero movie, you can understand why, if it's an Iron Man movie or if it's a Spider-Man movie, to see that person in that suit all the time,
Hmm.
and that's just who that person is. But this is Batman, so I did feel a bit left out in terms of seeing a lot more personality from Bruce Wayne. And maybe that's them playing this Batman differently than the other ones. I think I read in an
Yeah.
interview, uh, for doing research for this movie, that Robert Pattinson said that he was told that this Batman, or this Bruce Wayne, is not a playboy Bruce Wayne. This is a very serious, focused one. So we're not knocking him for it. We just think the story, the way it presents itself, Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
is almost like a side character. Barely seen,
Yeah.
barely heard from, and yeah, right. There's almost like
Yeah.
I almost
Agreed.
feel like there's like a middle character between Bruce Wayne and Batman that comes out, with the eye
Yeah.
black. I don't even know what to call it,
Right.
but it's like, it's different. It's not like anything we've seen before, which in a way it's a good thing. I feel like that opens up new experiences.
Hmm.
Yep. Okay, moving on from the main character, and maybe we'll come back to this a little bit as we talk about other characters. But any other characters that stood out to you from this movie? Um,
I think the other two characters that really stood out in a very positive way were Jeffrey Wright's Commissioner Gordon,
Amazing.
or at this point it would be Lieutenant Gordon, since he's not Commissioner yet, but yeah,
Yeah.
as Gordon, and then Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I think
Yeah.
they were
Talk about
both
great
really
casting.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about perfect for their roles. I think Jeffrey Wright, after Robert Pattinson, I think Jeffrey Wright stole the show. I think
Hmm.
every single scene he was in, he stood out. whether he had a
I
ton of
agree.
lines, or maybe he only was saying. I think the scene that, of course, everyone will probably remember him from, and I will, really go back and look at this, is the one in the jail cell where he's like, where all the cops are standing outside,
Right.
and Jeffrey Wright is like, I'll go talk to Batman because I'm cool with them, and
Right.
then
Right.
he's talking and they're whispering, and I think it's in promos as well. But it's just such a cool scene. The way they talk, the way they interact, and then Batman punches Jeffrey Wright, and then
Right.
of course he runs away, and then even that whole scene of the cops chasing him in the entire building and him just flying off, really one of the cooler scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very good scene. I think that's one of the scenes that like shows their relationship and their chemistry. I think the other one is kind of like after the murder of the first victim.
Yep.
Um, I think that's also very good because then when they have to go back and they're in this certain place, you see a little bit of their banter, a little bit of their playfulness, and a little bit Jeffrey Wright just is a little bit loose when these certain clues get found and he thinks,
Yeah.
okay, this killer is a little bit wacky and weird, but it's kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's interesting because because we see respect from both. Like,
Mhm.
the respect isn't just from Lieutenant Gordon
Right.
to Batman. It's Batman to Lieutenant Gordon as well, because I remember in one of the scenes when they're standing up by the bat sign, Lieutenant Gordon's like, "Oh, I was on that drug bust case because the killer's going after every single one who was
Hmm.
on that case," and then Batman right away, without even hesitation, he said, "He's not after you.
Hmm.
You're one of the good cops." And like he said it right away without any hesitation. So like that to me shows that that relationship will be unique, and it'll
Hmm.
be interesting to watch as we go in other movies. Really, honestly, that relationship is so important in any Batman movie, right? Gordon and Batman. I know we haven't heard about Robin. I have a theory that
Hmm.
the kid, that the mayor's kid,
Right.
is Robin, but
That's what I
I
was
don't.
thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When and I'm not too aware of this, but when does Robin typically come in? Because in the Dark Knight trilogy,
Hmm.
Robin wasn't like a main character until the last movie, Dark Knight
Right.
Rises, and even then he was he's a cop, and then that role was played by
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, great
Yeah.
actor. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling that that kid's Robin, but we'll see. We probably won't know about it until like another
Yeah.
movie or so. I mean, there were a lot of Easter eggs they left in towards the end of the movie.
It did.
Movie was really long, 2 hours 54 minutes. Right?
Yes.
It's a
It.
watch.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a
watch.
lengthy one.
It's a
It's
lengthy
really
one.
good. Yeah, I would say by the end it does. We'll say, or at least I will say, in my opinion, it does drag a little bit
Yep.
because usually some movies which are long, for example, just give an example, Endgame is very long, but you don't feel it; it just flies by. With this
Yeah.
one, it does fly by until maybe the last, I don't know, I would say 30 minutes. You start feeling it like how much more do we have?
Yeah.
We just had this piece. All right, is it over? No, there's still a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I mean, they set it up in such a grand way because there's
right.
this drug dealer, then you also have this drug bust, and you have all these bad
Hmm.
people, you have corrupt city politicians, so many plot, like it almost seems like they could have made this entire movie into like three different movies, and it would
Right.
have made sense, right? Because there were so many different layers, and maybe that's why it's 2 hours 54 minutes.
Hmm.
And that's fair, but typically you don't see movies that long unless it is like a finale to a trilogy, like we saw with Endgame, which was interesting. I wanted to kind of wrap up the character segment a little bit with
Hmm.
Zoe Kravitz. I thought she was a great character. I think she added that comic relief. I mean, if you want to say comic relief, really,
Right.
I don't know how many funny moments there were in
Right.
the movie, but just the way she was, her charisma. I think the way her relationship with one of the victims
Hmm.
was, I think that was endearing to see. It almost felt like the only person with a heart and with an emotion in this movie was Catwoman. I think her name's Selena in the movie,
Yeah.
and
Celine Kyle.
yep, Selena Kyle. But yeah, I feel like this was the only character in my mind that showed that emotion, the audience emotion, right? Because there's always a character. Maybe
Right.
sometimes there's a narrator in movies that is portraying what an audience is feeling. Typically, this is and we'll talk about it as we talk about more movies and TV shows. The biggest trope is like the main character's best friend, right? That's the audience,
Right.
right? That's like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, and the main character either follows the best friend or does something else. But essentially, in this movie, she was that person. She was the
Mm.
audience, with Batman, and
Yeah.
she definitely was
Agreed.
emotional in some cases. What would you think about her character? and
Yeah,
how it
no,
related to the movie. Yeah,
I liked it. Like you said, yeah, I think she brought a little bit of that comic relief, but not like funny like other movies that you may see where she's cracking up jokes. But I mean, she brought a little bit more life into
yeah,
this very dark place, and I
absolutely.
think that's a little basically a little bit Catwoman is she's kind of very playful, basically like a cat, I guess you would say. But that's
Yeah.
that's that's her whole thing. I think she played it very well. She had a lot of emotion, a lot of character, and you really were very invested more in her.
You really were. I mean, this kind of goes for same thing we said about Jeffrey Wright. Like, if there's a scene with the Batman and the Catwoman, you don't disregard the Catwoman. You more or less maybe even pay attention to the scene because of the things Catwoman is saying or doing. There were a few cat puns. Okay, I appreciate I appreciate them being adding in a few cat puns here and there. I don't know if you
Yes,
caught them, but it's a 2 hour 54-minute movie, so they had to add a few, right?
right. And some were pretty good. I did like the Nine Live one. That was pretty
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, that was funny. See, so there are some good elements to it. I guess as we move on to sort of the next segment, and we talked about the characters, the overall story, or the overall look and feel of the movie, like the environment that we were set in. Let's go into a little bit into the storyline of it, and maybe we can be more detailed. Um, is this spoilers? Maybe this is spoilers. We would recommend you watching this. If you made it this far, you've probably seen the movie. But if
Right.
you haven't seen the movie and you're just kind of trying to figure it out, if you really want to look at the movie and not care about spoilers, then go watch it and then come back. But if you don't really care about it, then stay on. But maybe we can go a little bit into storylines and
Yeah.
kind of portray that picture. So, where do you want to start off in terms of the story, like the actual story that we kind of get rolled into? Because the first scene, if I'm not mistaken, is of and this is where I was like, this is a detective movie right on in the first 10 minutes,
Hmm.
because you see the act of crime being committed, and
Hmm.
then everything follows. And typically you and I have seen many movies and TV shows.
Hmm.
If it's a crime or a detective one, that's how it starts off, right? Someone
Right.
dying or something happening, the crime being committed, and then
Yeah.
you get
Try
to
to put in the pieces and everything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're with it. But why don't we talk about that? Why don't you tell me about the story in and of itself, and what you thought of that?
Yeah, I like the story. I think it's very much a detective story, like we mentioned before, and it is kind of mostly about some sort of secret, something
Hmm.
that's
A lot of
been
riddles.
yes, a lot of riddles, which is how Paul Dano's Riddler comes in. But yeah, it's basically one big secret that that somehow in a way keeping Gotham stable, even though Gotham's not that stable. There's still a lot of crime and everything, but in a way where there's still some peace in there. But throughout these murders and everything, things are getting unraveled, and that could really fracture the city and really cause a lot of chaos.
Yeah, and I think and then that's a great way to sum it up, right? And then in terms of the story in and of itself, there's a drug gang angle to it. There's a corrupt politician angle to it. There's a
Hmm.
secret club that houses all of this information. There is the killer, the Riddler, who's committing all these crimes. His sort of look into all this, and how he, in a way, he relates himself to the Batman. Like, when he gets
Hmm.
caught at the end, him and Batman have a conversation. He says that Batman would appreciate this. Like, he like Batman would have come to thank him, right? Is
Right.
that the vibe you got towards the end of the movie with
Yeah.
Paul Dano's character,
Yeah, that's
the
what I got.
Riddler?
That he was like, "Hey, we're partners in crime. We helped each other. I mean, I helped uncover this. I helped. You should be,
Yeah,
shouldn't you be happy that we're getting rid of all this scum that's here. That's lying.
yep,
That's the main thing. No more lies. So that's lying to everybody. That's that's causing all of this.
yeah. I think I think that was the key moment for me in that movie, and that's sort of towards the later end of the movie. But that was the key moment for me where I realized that Batman is seen as a different person in Gotham than we portray him to be, right?
Right.
Because it could very easily come off as Batman being this rogue superhero of sort that no one really
Hmm.
wanted. Like, no one wanted you to do this. Like, you're just doing this
Hmm.
because you're trying to protect your city and your family's legacy. But like, no
Hmm.
one asked for it. No one necessarily wanted it, right? Like,
Hmm.
he's not necessarily, there was no calling for him to do this. He
Right.
stepped into this role, and that's why. you're seeing the underbelly of Gotham come out at night. And sure, the city is this dark city, this portrayed as that this violent city, and that's why you need Batman to save it. But it also opens it up to killers like Riddler who think they're just like Batman. Like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
doing a good thing. I'm killing people who are corrupt politicians who are destroying the city, who are not telling people the truth, where the ones that are not fortunate enough um
Yeah,
are getting the
toss
short
in
end of the
jail.
stick. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If you're looking at it from an objective standpoint, Batman very much, Riddler making that connection to the Batman, it hit me. Then I was like, oh wow,
Mhm.
they are very similar. A little bit
Yeah.
different, but they're very similar. A funny point I want to make is that I don't think I saw the Batman fire a gun at all in this entire movie.
No. Yeah.
Right?
No, I don't think he ever did. I think the most that he fired was he always used the grappling gun. I think that was pretty cool. Let
That
him,
was cool.
you know,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
No gun. Yeah,
No gun. So just to wrap up
yeah.
the story angle of it, um, are there any loose ends that you noticed that we need to
Uh,
follow up on in maybe future movies?
how, any loose ends? I would say I'm still kind of interested, like what's going on with, I guess, like his whole family, his whole
We
family
don't we
side,
don't,
and
we
with the
don't learn
whole
too much
like,
about it, right?
yeah, and about
Even
Alfred and
Alfred.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
when Alfred, it's kind of just like, okay, this is just kind of, he was there, and then I think that was the one part where I was like a little bit like disappointed. Just, there's the other side where it's him and Alfred all the time. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing. I
Yeah.
just felt like there wasn't so much chemistry, or a lot of, a lot of back and
Yeah.
forth, and love between those two.
It didn't seem like it, and I think that's why we didn't even mention
Yeah.
it when we were talking about like the characters that we saw and the way Batman
Mhm,
interacted with Catwoman, or the way
mhm,
Batman interacted with with Jeffrey Wright's character,
mhm.
Lieutenant Gordon. There was just no connection between this Alfred and Batman. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's a classic,
Mhm,
partnership, right? But here I just didn't feel it, and maybe that's one of the negatives
mhm,
that we kind of bring up, is that even though the
mhm,
movie was great and we really enjoyed it, and in and of
mhm,
itself it's a great, just dark, gritty, detective movie,
mhm.
the element of it being a Batman movie and the connection between Batman and Alfred just wasn't there. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
and maybe they're setting it up. Like I said, maybe they're setting it up
Mhm.
for the next movies, but it just wasn't there. It just almost felt like Alfred was an assistant of his.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. An assistant, I felt like he was more. He did feel more like a butler instead of like a friend, like a family member.
Yeah.
Because a
Yep.
lot of times, when Alfred helped, he was like, "Well, have you tried this?" And it was, Alfred's helping, but Batman already knew. It's like, "Just do this."
Yeah.
And then, again, when Alfred kind of, tells him something, he kind of, Batman or Bruce Wayne snaps at him, kind of going like, "You're not my dad," and it really didn't
Yeah.
feel like that payoff came off. Same
No.
thing, when Alfred wakes up from the hospital,
Yeah.
he's happy, but then Robert's like mad at him, and then somehow it gets resolved somehow so quickly. And same
Yeah. It
thing,
was
I
so
didn't
quick.
feel the emotion. Yeah, and I didn't
Yeah.
feel the emotion when he's like racing back, knowing that Alfred has a bomb, or there's a bomb in his apartment, and Alfred, I just felt like, well, we never really saw that they really liked each other, so I just feel like he's not
It
really.
seemed forced.
Yeah, yeah, it seemed
Yeah.
forced.
Team Force, right? He got it, and then he was
Mhm.
racing back, and all that
Yeah,
happened. Even though he was by his bedside, and maybe this goes back to
yeah,
the kind of character, or the kind of person Bruce Wayne is. He's so aloof. He's so out of it. I don't even think he wants to be Bruce Wayne. To be honest with you, I
right.
think I think based on this movie, I feel like he would rather just be Batman all the time, just sleep in his bat suit, just act in his bat suit, and that's how people know him as.
Yeah, I agree exactly.
Right. So that was a bit disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. I wish Alfred would have been more of a central character in this movie than he was, and because it seems like this Alfred's like amazingly smart, can just
Yeah,
literally, he was able
and
to solve
super
riddles.
buff.
Super buff. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And so he can protect him literally. You
yeah.
know. So yeah, interesting. So as we sort of wrap up this review, any sort of final thoughts as we go into, and we can even talk about DC in
Mhm.
general, right?
Yeah. I mean, I am very excited for this. Yeah, this kind of new set of movies. Yeah, I like what DC is doing, where they do have that connected universe that they started, but they've also let individuals come in and do their own thing as well. I think
They
that's
have,
really
yeah,
cool.
yep,
Yeah, so I am liking to see what's gonna happen with this new trilogy of Batman. You know, what's
yeah,
the next two movies. I think my only disappointment was
yep, exactly. And I think what Isaac is saying there is that the key, the disappointment part is there, but also another thing for me more than anything was the fact that we didn't have that, like it didn't set us up for the
Mhm.
sequel. I mean, it kind of
Right.
set us up for like the fact that in the jail we see the Riddler laughing with someone.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a Joker, maybe it's someone else. We don't
Hmm.
necessarily know,
Right.
but it didn't really set itself up for a sequel because they connected a lot of loose ends. There's
Hmm.
not too many remaining, right? The Penguin is still there,
Hmm.
but like that's
Yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah.
No
Yeah. I would
real loose
say.
ends.
Yeah, I would say the only disappointing parts were, yeah, a little bit Paul Dano. I liked him, but I don't think he was as menacing, and I just
Mm,
felt like there was, we saw him a couple of times, and then he did a couple of great things, but the riddles weren't as interesting, and it just wasn't like
yeah,
I just thought his plan was just all right, and then yeah, I think the setup for future movies was so like, okay, where are we going with this? And then I didn't like the whole Joker part. I would say that.
yeah.
Uh,
The
I was
element
like,
towards the end.
yeah, the element towards the end. I was like, okay, I don't know if this Joker's gonna be great or not. It doesn't.
Yeah,
So far from what I'm seeing, I don't know.
we'll
And I
see.
think, yeah,
Yeah,
we will see. It might be Joker, like you're saying. It might be Joker. It might not be. It might be somebody else. But it seemed
yeah,
like Joker, and I just feel like maybe we should give a little bit, even though Joker is Batman's greatest like villain. Maybe give a rest to Joker. Have some other characters from
yeah.
Batman's Rogue Gallery. I
That's
think,
true.
yeah.
That is a very good point because maybe it doesn't need to be as similar to the way Christopher Nolan
Hmm.
structured it, right?
Right.
Because this Batman really on its own stand like we talked about this entire review. It's a standalone. It could be a standalone movie and it will be okay, but that also means that they can do a lot of different things because it's set up in such a different manner. Like this Batman is unlike any other Batman we've ever seen, good or bad. That's really personal, preferences, but
Hmm.
this opens up doors to do a lot of cool things that Batman hasn't been able to do before,
Right. No,
right?
yeah, I agree. I
Right.
agree. Yeah, I am excited, still excited to see where it goes. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it does try to go a little bit in kind of like the previous ones in
Yeah.
similar
It's
direction.
exactly. And it's DC, a little bit different than Marvel. And I'm
Hmm.
glad they've finally realized that this is what we're good at. We're
Hmm.
good at making, really strong standalone movies and sometimes they turn into trilogies like it did with Dark Knight. But let's bring on
Hmm.
great talent. Let's bring on great
Hmm.
directors that have a vision and let's just make
Hmm.
movies on our own. Let's not try to compete with
Hmm.
Marvel because I think there was a time when Marvel started to really show out that DC was,
Right.
trying to do different things, but I feel like now they're settled in. Warner Media in general has settled in to being comfortable with the stories that they have and just telling those stories the right way,
Oh,
right?
right. No. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, kind of bring on great talent, like you stated, and then yeah, let them do what they want. Not completely what they want, but uh, let let's see what their vision is. Let they have. You know, let's go with that. If it fits and if it works, then absolutely. Let's go
Yeah,
with that plan and that vision.
yep. Really, the darker side of superhero movies is what they're going for, and it makes sense. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So with that being said, I feel like we're good with the review. I know we'll wrap this up by giving like our out of 5 stars. How many stars we'll give? Because of course the name of the podcast is 4 out of 5. Hopefully you guys rate this episode 5 out of 5. But the name of the podcast is 4 out of 5. But yeah, why don't
Yeah,
we
no.
wrap this episode up with our 5 star review? Like how many stars out of 5 would you give this movie?
Yeah, out of five, um, I would say it's a good four out of five. I would say it's a good 4 out of 5. I wouldn't say, yeah. I think that one kind of point that's missing is the fact that yeah, although Batman's good, he's kind of one character. I think it does drag a little bit towards the end, and then uh, other than that, I just feel like it's it's a solid movie, but it's not as kind of interesting.
Mm. It's a good point. Yeah, I think for me, I'll go with like around a 4.5 out of 5. I really
Hmm.
liked the movie. Like I thought it was an amazing movie. I thought the
Hmm.
storyline was amazing. I thought the characters really did a great job. They had a great cast as well. But it ran a little bit too long. I think it could have been
Hmm.
cut down, trimmed up a little bit more. And also, I feel like uh, some of the relationships with Batman and Alfred was a bit of a downer, and I also didn't like the way Batman was portrayed for the most part, which hopefully, you know, as we go into more movies, we understand why this Batman was portrayed this way. But as a Batman movie, 4.5 out of 5. If it was just a standalone movie on its own, I would probably give it 5 out of 5 because it was just that good. I think the
Yeah.
storyline was that good. So I think you and I both are on the same page here that people should go watch it if they haven't seen it, and if they have seen it, I would assume they really liked it as well.
Yeah.
Yep,
I agree. Um,
exactly. Well,
but yeah, go
this
watch it.
go watch it. Yeah, go watch it and let us know how let us know how what you thought about it. But anyway, this is our first episode. I really appreciate you guys joining. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know we enjoyed doing this, and as we go on, we'll add in new elements, we'll add in new segments. But hope you guys like this episode. Any closing thoughts, Isaac?
And then just yeah, just subscribe. Keep tuning into us.
Yep.
Uh, we'll have more to come. Uh, DC stuff, probably Marvel stuff, and other interesting stuff that that's on that
Yeah.
seems interesting.
There's so many things on TV shows,
Yeah,
everything, and there's so many things to cover because
exactly.
there's this
Yeah, music
great
as
stuff
well.
out there.
Yeah.
Music, yeah, I mean, we have content and we'll bring that to you, so keep watching. We appreciate it. Thank you guys. We'll see you next episode. This is Monil signing
Uh,
off.
Isaac signing off as well.
Bye.
Bye.